Welcome, fermenters. My name is a weekly series in which we take a deep dive into different fermentation-related topics. Now, this week's topic is called, what is the FerMatrix? So we'll get into all of that. It's actually, spoiler alert, it's something that I invented that I hope catches on in the fermentation world, and we'll go into what it is in a moment. But first, I want to invite you to come to FerMatrix.com, check out all of our free resources related to helping you make fermented foods and beverages at home. I've been doing this for 15 years, and our mission is to help improve people's lives by teaching them why and how to ferment food, as well as to create communities that are connected through our guts. So like I said, we have a number of ways to do that, whether that's our free recipes, tips, our weekly newsletter, as well as self-paced online courses you can take covering a wide variety of different fermented foods. That's at academy.fermentersclub.com. And we have other things occasionally like live cultures, like sourdough starters. Once in a while, we'll have small batch ferments. But we also do hands-on workshops here in Southern California, as well as private team building workshops and one-on-one coaching, etc. So all the ways that you would like to learn about fermentation, we've got them covered. And about a year and a half ago, I wrote a book called Fearless Fermenting, which is actually what we're going to dive into this morning to take a deeper look. But it's a cookbook meets textbook, and it's all about fermented foods and the science behind them, how it contributes to gut health, all those different things. So let's take a deep dive. Oh, and by the way, one more day, we have the hardcover copies on sale for just $29. That's including free shipping throughout the United States. And if you're outside the US, we have the book available in on Amazon.com in Kindle, paperback, as well as hardcover. All right, so what is the FerMatrix? I like to say it's a new way to look at fermented food recipes. So when I was doing the research, as well as just doing recipes over the years, I noticed that there were some recipes that obviously were a little bit simpler than others. And so when I was organizing my book and the recipes in it, I wanted to kind of help people understand who were new to fermentation, what the relative complexity of a particular dish was going to be. And so I, using my analyst hat, because I was an analyst before I became a fermenter, I wrote out a spreadsheet and decided, okay, here are the things that I think will contribute to whether a recipe is relatively easy to do versus maybe more complex. And so that's what blossomed into the FerMatrix. And I'll show you, this is all covered in deep detail in the book. Here's a copy of the book. We've got a whole chapter at the beginning called Enter the FerMatrix. And so we're going to go into a little bit this morning, but so you can see, we're going to break it down. And then I'll show you later on, every recipe in the book has a specific FerMatrix score. So if you're, basically if you're new to fermentation, you might want to pick some recipes that are, lower on the scale. The lower number implies that it's less complex. And then as you get more well-versed and more comfortable, you can tackle the more complex recipes. So let's take a look at an example. So the number range goes anywhere, I think, from like 7 to 21 are the easiest and the hardest recipes in the book. And like I said, each recipe has been given the score. And the higher the score, the more difficult or complex the ferment is. You can kind of see the scale here. If it's between 1 and 9, those are the simplest recipes. Moderate would be 10 to 14, and anything above 15 I consider to be complex. So here's a snippet from the book. This is our hot pepper sauce recipe. And as you can see with any recipe in the book, you've got all the details, how long it takes to prepare, yield, etc., as well as the FerMatrix scores. So hot pepper sauce happens to be right about the middle of complexity. And we'll actually look deeper into why that is, what makes up that number. So again, I took the unique attributes of different foods that are commonly fermented and created what I hope to be a universal scale to understand the complexity. Each one of those attributes, I call those an aspect. So let's take a look at each of the aspects. So for our hot sauce recipe, well, you see what the aspects are on the left-hand column here. Whether it's wild versus cultured, that is whether it's something that you can just ferment, like cabbage or cucumbers, versus something like kombucha or miso where you need a specific culture. So if it's wild, I consider that to be simpler, so the value of that would be lower. Or if it requires a culture, that would be a higher score. And so the value that I assign to the hot sauce recipe for that aspect of wild versus cultured is 2. And what that means is wild, but backslop recommended. So backslop is if you've got extra brine on hand from a previous batch, you can add that to the ferment, although it's not strictly required. So, and as I said, if we look at go into the book, it actually gives you the description of each one of these aspects one by one. So I'm just going to kind of glance or give you one example, and then if you want to learn more and deep dive, get yourself a copy of the book. So wild versus cultured. The next aspect is the number of ingredients. So obviously the fewer ingredients, the simpler the recipe. So in this case, we've got 4 to 6 ingredients in my hot sauce recipe, and that translates to a value of 2. So it's not a 1-to-1 always, but again, look at the scales in the book, and you'll be able to sort of use sort of the decoder ring of what each set of values is, and as it translates to a score. Brine required, yes, no, that's a simple score, 0 or 1. Whether there's climate control needed, so certain recipes, especially the ones that are more complex, like yogurt or miso or tempeh, koji, not necessarily miso. Koji, in order to make it, you need to incubate the rice and the mold or whatever you're culturing for a few hours, maybe 48 hours. So in that case, you need a specific different temperature than just ambient temperature. So in that case, climate control needed value would be higher than 0, but since we're just making hot sauce, you don't need that. So you can kind of see the rest of it. The number of days of fermentation, that's another attribute that lends to its complexity. The value of it is 7, but that's because that means it's between 91 and 180 days. I like to ferment my hot sauce anywhere from 3 to 6 months, so that's why I assigned this score. The number of fermentation phases, most ferments have 1, but in the case of things like miso, there's you've got your koji making as a 1 phase, and then the miso making is a 2nd phase. So you can see that value. The total amount of preparation time in hours is the next aspect. Whether there's any special equipment needed to make that particular ferment. Whether there's a starter involved. Again, in the case of hot sauce, there's no starter, so the value of that is 0. And finally, whether there's a hazard factor. Now, that could be anything from a physical hazard, like when you're making kombucha, for example. You're building up pressure in the bottle. And so there's a potential for the bottle to break or to make a mess. So that's a little bit more hazardous than something like hot sauce, which is not under pressure. There's no biological hazard. There's no physical hazard. So it has a score of 0. So these are the aspects. And like I said, I just picked hot sauce as a recipe example. So you can kind of see if we added up all the values of those different factors, we get a FerMatrix score of 15, which then you would then find in the, again, back at the beginning of the recipe. So that's sort of what the breakdown is. Like I said, each recipe has its own unique score based on its ranking within each of these aspects. I'll show you one more example here. I picked from the book, cinnamon raisin sourdough bread. So sourdough, again, has some different aspects as you might compared to something like hot sauce. For example, we do need a starter, and Anyway, so the score breaks down to 17, which is slightly more complex compared to something like hot sauce. And if we wanted to take a look, again, go into the booklet, to the book, you can see the various aspects and what contributes to them. And I also have all the way in the very back is an appendix, which has each of the, let's see, where is it? Each of the different, the nerdy details for you for each one of the recipes. There we go. It's an eye chart here. You probably can't see it much, but you can see in the, for any particular recipe, you'll see all the values that I came up with and any particular comments at the very end. So that's in your appendix. Yeah, if we just want to flip through and check out some of the recipes, you can spot. Here we go in our kimchi chapter. We've got eggplant kimchi with a score of 14, bok choy kimchi with a score of 12. So that's what the FerMatrix is. Like I said, I love to see this get picked up. If you're a fermenter and you're writing a recipe book and you want to apply this score, I've totally open sourced what the explanations of everything are for the scores. I'd love to get some feedback. If you think there's something missing or something else you'd like to see, or you just think the scores are just plain wrong, you know, feel free to give a comment. Like I said, every one of these is covered in the book in detail, which for one more day is on sale. So grab that. Otherwise, you can always get a copy on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, or hardcover. And that should just about cover it. Once again, feel free to go to FerMatrixClub.com and get insight into all this fermenty stuff. And I think that covers today's topic of Fermentation Fact Friday, all about the FerMatrix. So if you like this kind of stuff, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share the video. And please do leave a comment below if you have any comments about the FerMatrix or anything else fermentation related. So until next week, I'm Austin Durant, and thank you for watching. Happy fermenting.